Respected viewers, dear family of dreamers, thank you for lending me not just your ears, but a quiet corner of your life. I speak to you with humility because money is never just money. It is memory, emotion, fear, hope, and destiny quietly waiting for direction. There is a moment in every life when fate whispers instead of shouting. A small envelope, a bank notification, a first paycheck. Most people don't realize it, but in that moment, two futures stand side by side. One leads to freedom, the other leads to years of quiet regret. And the tragedy is this: both futures begin with the same amount of money. I want you to sit with that thought for a few seconds. Because wealth is not built when you earn more. It is built when you think differently the first time money touches your hands. I have watched thousands of lives unfold from a distance. I have seen brilliant people remain broke and ordinary people become quietly wealthy. The difference was never intelligence, it was habit, it was behavior. It was what they chose to do with their very first proof that the world would pay them for their time. When most people receive their first paycheck, their heart races, not with vision, but with relief. Bills, desires, long-delayed wants. The mind says, I deserve this, and perhaps you do. But here is the uncomfortable truth. What you do with your first paycheck teaches your subconscious how money should be treated for the rest of your life. I once met a young man, smart, hardworking, full of ambition. His first paycheck wasn't large, but it was honest. He spent it quickly. Clothes, dinners, a phone upgrade, nothing reckless, nothing foolish, and yet years later he was still doing the same thing, just with bigger numbers, more income, same emptiness. Contrast that with another young soul I met, quieter, less confident. When her first paycheck arrived, she did something strange. She saved a portion, not because it was practical, but because it was symbolic. She told herself, I am the kind of person who keeps promises to my future. That single act did not make her rich, but it made her become someone who could become rich. You see, truly wealthy people do something very different with their first paycheck. They do not ask, what can this buy me today? They ask, what habit does this create in me forever? They treat that first income like a seed, not a reward. There is a dangerous lie society tells you, that enjoyment must come before discipline, but wealth works in reverse. Discipline creates enjoyment later, deeper, and without anxiety. The rich understand something subtle. Money is a tool for building optionality, freedom of choice, freedom of time, freedom from panic. And the first paycheck is not about lifestyle, it is about identity. Am I a consumer or a builder? Am I reacting or designing? Most people never pause long enough to ask these questions. They rush, they celebrate loudly, and then, quietly, they repeat the same financial story for decades. Let me tell you something uncomfortable, but honest. The size of your first paycheck does not matter. The behavior attached to it matters more than any raise you will ever receive. Wealthy minds delay gratification, not because they hate pleasure, but because they love peace. They understand that short-term excitement is expensive and long-term calm is priceless. They invest early, not always in stocks or businesses, but in learning how money behaves. They read, they observe, they track. They make small mistakes when the cost is low, so they don't make fatal ones when the stakes are high.
And perhaps most importantly, they do not try to look rich. Looking rich is a loud performance. Becoming rich is a quiet discipline. If your first paycheck teaches you to impress others, you will spend your life chasing approval. If it teaches you to build reserves, you will spend your life sleeping peacefully. I want you to reflect on this. Every great oak tree was once an unnoticed seed, And every financially free life once began with a decision no one applauded. This is not about deprivation, it is about direction. Not about fear, but about foresight. And as we move deeper into this conversation, I want you to ask yourself, not what you did with your first paycheck, but what habit your money is reinforcing right now. Because the truth is, your future wealth is not waiting in your next job. It is waiting in your next decision. Where we left off, we were not talking about money alone. We were talking about identity. Because money, in its quiet way, always obeys the character of the person holding it. Now, let me take you a little deeper. Most people believe rich people are brave with money. In reality, they are careful in a very specific way. When the first paycheck arrives, an average mind feels powerful for the first time. It says, I can finally relax. A wealthy mind feels responsible. It says, now I must not waste this proof that I can create value. That difference is subtle, but it compounds brutally over time. You see, wealth is not created by dramatic moves. It is created by boring consistency. And boring consistency begins with respect for money, for time, for consequences. I once observed a pattern that repeats across generations. Those who struggle financially often treat money emotionally. Happiness, sadness, stress, celebration, all are solved with spending. Money becomes a medicine for feelings. And like any misuse of medicine, the relief is temporary, but the damage is permanent. Rich people learn this lesson early. They separate emotion from finance. Their first paycheck is not spent to prove worth to the world. It is used to build quiet confidence within themselves. They ask questions most people avoid. How long can this money work for me? How can I avoid being forced into bad decisions later? How do I turn today's effort into tomorrow's freedom? This is why they save before they spend. This is why they invest before they upgrade. This is why they learn before they risk. Let me tell you a small story. A young employee receives his first salary. His friends encourage him, "You earned it, enjoy it, life is short." And life is short, but poverty makes it feel endlessly long. Another young employee hears the same voices, but instead of obeying them, he quietly sets aside a portion. Not much, just enough to say, I am in control. He begins reading about businesses, about ownership, about how money flows when you are asleep. Years pass. The first man earns more now, but feels trapped. Bigger bills, bigger stress, bigger fear of losing it all. The second man earns calmly, not always more, but with less panic, more options, more dignity. The tragedy is this: both worked equally hard, but only one understood what money was trying to teach him. Wealthy people understand leverage, not just financial leverage, but mental leverage. They use early income to build systems, emergency funds, skills, investments, relationships. These things don't look exciting, but they prevent disaster. And avoiding disaster is one of the greatest wealth strategies ever invented. Most people think wealth is about making the right move. In truth, it's about avoiding the wrong ones over and over. The rich don't chase every opportunity. They wait, they observe, they let others make mistakes first. Their first paycheck trains them to be patient, not impulsive. They understand one painful truth: if you can't manage a little money, a lot of money will manage you. So they practice early, quietly, humbly.
And here is something rarely spoken. The first paycheck is not about the money you earn. It is about the standard you set. Will you be someone who reacts or someone who prepares? Will you spend to feel important today or invest to become peaceful tomorrow? As we move forward, we must confront the hardest part of this journey, the invisible enemies of wealth. The habits that look harmless, feel normal, and slowly drain decades of potential. Because understanding what rich people do with their first paycheck is only half the story. The other half is understanding what they refuse to do, no matter how tempting it feels. The things they refuse to do are often the very things society celebrates. They refuse to inflate their lifestyle the moment money touches their hands. They refuse to confuse earning with owning. They refuse to believe that looking rich is the same as being secure. This is where the road quietly splits. Most people, after their first paycheck, upgrade their appearance before upgrading their thinking. New phone, new clothes, new habits. The outside changes quickly, but the inside remains fragile. And a fragile mindset cannot carry heavy wealth for long. Those who eventually build real wealth do something far less glamorous. They upgrade their margin of safety. They build a buffer between income and expenses, a space where mistakes don't destroy them, a cushion where bad luck doesn't become a life sentence. This is not fear. This is wisdom. I've seen people with high salaries living in constant anxiety and people with modest incomes sleeping peacefully. The difference was never intelligence. It was discipline practiced early. Let me share another quiet truth. Rich people treat their first paycheck as a seed, not a reward. A seed is small, it doesn't look powerful, but it carries a future inside it. If you eat the seed, the pleasure is immediate and ends quickly. If you plant it, the wait is uncomfortable, but the harvest can last a lifetime. Most people eat the seed. They tell themselves, when I earn more, then I'll save. But life rarely becomes cheaper. Responsibilities grow, expectations rise, and suddenly saving feels impossible. Not because income is low, but because habits are expensive. Those who think differently reverse the order. They save first, even if it hurts a little, especially if it hurts a little. Because that small discomfort is teaching them something vital: delayed gratification. Delayed gratification is not denial. It is choosing a better future over a louder present. With their early income, wealthy-minded individuals invest in 3 things before anything else. First, stability. They build emergency funds so desperation never forces bad decisions. Second, knowledge. They read, they observe businesses, they learn how money behaves under pressure. They understand that ignorance is far more expensive than any course or book. Third, ownership. Even small ownership, a simple investment, a fraction of a business, a habit of thinking like an owner, not just a worker. This doesn't make them rich overnight. It makes them hard to break. And being hard to break is the foundation of all lasting wealth. There's a dangerous myth that wealth comes from taking big risks early. In reality, the truly wealthy avoid irreversible risks. They don't gamble with rent money. They don't chase trends they don't understand. They don't let excitement replace judgment. Their first paycheck trains them to ask one powerful question: what is the downside, and can I survive it? If the answer is no, they wait. Waiting is a superpower few people respect. Now, let me speak directly to you. If your first paycheck is already behind you, this lesson is still alive. Every paycheck after this moment can become a first if you decide to treat it differently. You are not late. You are only early to awareness. What matters is not how much you earned before, but how you think from this moment forward. In the next part, we will talk about the inner transformation that quietly turns ordinary earners into extraordinary builders. The mindset shift that changes how money flows toward you, not away from you. Because money does not follow effort alone. It follows clarity, patience, and character. There comes a moment in every financial journey when effort alone stops being enough. You work hard, you stay busy, you do everything society told you to do, yet somehow money slips through your fingers like sand. This is where most people feel confused, tired, sometimes even ashamed. But this is also where transformation begins. People who build lasting wealth understand one deep truth. Money is not just earned with hands, it is guided by the mind.
When they receive income, especially early in life, they don't ask, "What can I buy?" They ask, "What kind of person must I become to deserve more?" That question changes everything. Because wealth is not a destination, it is a byproduct of behavior repeated over time. Those who grow rich slowly train themselves to think long-term in a short-term world. They stop chasing applause. They stop comparing timelines. They stop letting other people's lifestyles decide their spending. Comparison is one of the most expensive habits on earth. I've seen people double their income and still feel poor because they doubled their desires too. And I've seen others remain calm and confident with far less because their desires were disciplined.
Those who listen early avoid years of regret. Here's another quiet habit they develop early. They separate ego from money. They don't need their car to announce success. They don't need their clothes to explain their worth. They don't need approval to validate progress. Their confidence grows from competence, not consumption. And this frees up something priceless: capital. Capital to invest, capital to wait, capital to say no to bad opportunities and yes to great ones. Patience is not passive. Patience is active restraint in service of a bigger vision. When setbacks come, and they always do, wealth-minded people don't panic. They planned for turbulence. They built slack into their lives, and slack creates resilience. This is why their money lasts longer. This is why their stress is lower. This is why their decisions are clearer. Over time, something beautiful happens. Money starts working with them instead of against them. Opportunities appear not because they are lucky, but because they are ready, because they are liquid, because they are calm when others are desperate. And calm people see clearly. If there is one message I want to leave you with before we pause, it is this: your first paycheck is not about celebration, it is about direction. Direction decides destiny. You don't need perfection, you need alignment. A small habit, repeated with integrity, will outperform 1,000 bursts of motivation. In the next and final part, we will connect everything: how identity, patience, and purpose quietly compound into wealth that lasts, and why inner peace is the greatest dividend of all. Beloved listeners, let us bring everything home, calmly, gently, and truthfully. We began this journey with a simple paycheck, a number written on paper, yet what it truly carried was a message about destiny. Because wealth was never about how much arrives in your hands. It has always been about what leaves your hands and what stays in your character. The people who build lasting wealth do not chase money. They build systems, they build habits, they build patience, and most importantly, they build themselves. When that first paycheck arrived, they did something deeply uncommon in a noisy world. They paused. They didn't rush to prove success. They didn't try to look rich. They didn't let excitement steal their future. They chose responsibility over reward, vision over validation. And that single choice quietly shaped decades. Because money follows identity. If you see yourself as a spender, money will visit briefly and leave. If you see yourself as a builder, money will stay, grow, and invite more. We spoke about restraint, not as sacrifice, but as self-respect. About investing, not just in assets, but in knowledge, discipline, and time. About patience, not as waiting, but as trusting the process when no one is watching. This is the secret few talk about. Wealth is built in silence. Character compounds quietly, and peace arrives when your life costs less than your values. One day, without drama, without applause, you wake up and realize something profound. You are no longer afraid of money. You are no longer controlled by it. You are no longer chasing it. You are aligned with it. And that alignment brings something greater than riches: freedom, clarity,
inner peace. So if you are holding your first paycheck today, or your 100th, remember this: spend to live, save to breathe, invest to grow, and think long-term even when the world begs you to think small. Because abundance is not loud, vision is not urgent, and true wealth feels calm. And in that calm, you will find everything you were really looking for.